In most countries that make selective changes, different changes are made independently over many years, but one of the few examples of a unified program consisting of many changes launched simultaneously is the 19-day whirlwind of Australia's Prime Minister Gough Whitlam from December 1st to December 19th of 1972. The question of freedom from constraints has been important to Australia, and that freedom, or lack thereof, has changed with time. Until World War II, the oceans protected Australia from any realistic risk of attack, just as they protected the mainland United States after independence until the World Trade Center attack of September 11, 2011. Since the Japanese bombing raid on Darwin of February 19, 1942, Australians have realized that their country is no longer free from external constraints. Even before 1942, though, Australians' European-dominated society has depended on help from supportive friends, initially Britain, which in the years after the First Fleet even provided food and later defense, and from World War II onwards, the United States. While Australia was never at risk of direct attack before the Darwin raid, Australians did feel concern about French, German, American, and Japanese military and colonial expansion to Pacific Islands, beginning in the latter half of the 19th century. Australia looked to the British fleet for protection against those concerns, so much so that Australia failed to take responsibility for its own defense during the 1930s and allowed its own armed forces to atrophy. Australia's changes over the last 70 years have not been in response to an acute crisis, but instead have been a gradual process developing over a long period of time, accelerating since World War II as Australia's British identity degenerated from a reality to a myth. While Australians themselves may not apply the word crisis to Australia, I find it useful to think of Australia as having undergone a slowly unfolding crisis, because Australia's issues of selective change have been similar to those issues in other nations responding to sudden crises. In that respect, recent changes in Australia resemble changes during the same decades in Germany, which also unfolded slowly. There were, of course, some notable moments in Australia's train of slow developments, particularly the sinking of the Prince of Wales and the repulse, Singapore's surrender, and the Darwin air raid, all within the span of 71 days. But crisis and change in Australia involved nothing approaching the transforming shock of the arrival of Commodore Perry's warships from Meiji, Japan on July 8, 1853, the Russian attack on November 30th, 1939 for Finland, or Pinochet's coup and Allende's death on September 11, 1973 for Chile, and the failed October 1st, 1965 coup and subsequent genocide for Indonesia. Australia's reappraisal of its core values and its train of selective changes are surely not over. In 1999, Australia held a referendum on which Australia should abandon the Queen of Britain as its head of state and instead become a republic. While the referendum was defeated by a vote of 55% to 45%, decades earlier it would have been utterly unthinkable even to hold such a referendum, let alone to contemplate the possibility of a 45% no vote. The percentage of Australians who were born in Britain is rapidly decreasing. It seems only a matter of time before there will be another referendum on which Australia should become a republic, and the chances of a yes vote will be higher. Within a decade or two, it is likely that Asians will constitute over 15% of Australia's population and its legislators, and over 50% of the students in top Australian universities. Sooner or later, Australia will elect an Asian as a prime minister. As those changes unfold, won't it appear incongruous for Australia to retain the Queen of Britain as its head of state, so retain her portrait on its currency, and to retain an Australian flag based on the British flag? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, let me see this. Oh, funny Australian. Yipes, I had that all wrong. Okay, let's get here. Welcome to another episode out here on the Whoop Whoop, where we're stoked to get our shred on. I'm just cruising out here, the far outback, getting on the tail of this great white shark, looking for the goods. All these other skiers out here having a whinge saying the skiing's no good. They be spit the dummy. They don't know what they're talking about, dumb cunts. have to have a couple kangaroos loose in the top paddock to think this wasn't good skiing out here. This guy gets it, though he's pole planting like a dumb cunt. Be fair dinkum to say these skis shred.
Hey, it's still icy out there.
It's not good. I'm just out here mucking around, trying to stay optimistic, but I feel like I'm skiing on the surface of the bleached Great Barrier Reef here.
Oh my God. Horrible.
Jesus Christ. No dramas, no problem. What's the problem with that? Rock hard, blue ice landing. One last spot looking for the goods over here. Ah, there it is, half-inch on ice. Perfect. If you set through that, good on ya. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button.